The price of gold is kind of going crazy, and it's got a lot of people wondering, can you make a living from prospecting? Well, there are some guys who do that. Not a lot, but there are some guys who do that. And the idea of living out in the wild, working on your own schedule, no boss telling you what to do, but deciding for yourself what you want to do, and the challenge, can you find that gold? It's out there. Can you find it? And it's not easy. It takes skill to find gold. So there's a lot of people thinking of stuff like that, and there's various versions of it, and we're going to talk about all of that in this video and answer important questions like, how much can you make out there prospecting? And what's typical? What's unusual? What happens? And so we'll get into all the details of that, and you'll be able to think about this question and answer it for yourself. It's also hard to make enough money to live on. The guys that I know that do this, the various versions that they do, they live a very low cost existence. It's a very much living out of the back of your van or pickup, and just kind of living hand to mouth, minimizing their expenses and doing all that kind of stuff. Now, I'll tell you, there is some nice gold to be found, and you might ask, well, how about you, Chris? You're pretty experienced. So I actually looked back at my numbers from last year, and I averaged around a little over 2 grams a day. How much can you make? Well, like I say, I'm an experienced guy. Looking over the past, I'd say that a couple of grams is a pretty solid average, but this is for me, a guy with more than 40 years experience. And if you think that going out, hey, I've never found a flake before, but I'm going to quit my job and go mining for gold. Yeah, you're not going to be getting 2 grams a day. You have to be super, ooper, duper lucky for that. It's unlikely. A lot of new guys, when I was brand new, getting 1/10 of a gram per day, which comes out to like $10 a day at today's prices. $10 is, can you buy a can of beans for $10? Sure. Can you buy a little something more? Yeah, I guess. But again, that's pretty slim pickings. Once you got a more experience and maybe you get in, maybe you're making 1/2 gram a day as a comparatively new prospector. But part of the thing that you need to know, is, do I have enough money to live on while I learn? Because honestly, prospecting for gold, finding gold, I say this in almost all my videos, is a skill. You just don't walk out there and say, hey, I've never found any gold before, but hey, let's start digging over there and I'll be making $200 a day. Yeah, that's incredibly unlikely. It's a skill that, takes time to learn. And, in the same way, if I went to the Home Depot and bought me a pipe wrench, that doesn't make me a journeyman plumber. Or if I bought a voltmeter at the Home Depot, that doesn't make me an experienced electrician. You can buy the equipment, but it takes time to learn. And even if you study, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about my book at the end. If you watch videos, read my book and learn, it's going to advance you in the line of learning that skill. But it's still something that takes time, and it isn't something that you just walk out there. Some of the videos just show you as the guys finding stuff. It's certainly possible to find things. There's gold out there to be found. I showed you some of my gold. There's gold out there to be found. But is it the brand new guy who doesn't know anything? It's just a totally random thing? No, there's a skill to it. There's a knowledge to it. There's an experience to it. And like I said, 2 guys that I know have found nuggets over 50 ounces. Those 2 guys are both highly experienced, have decades of prospecting. In the same ballpark as me. I've never found anything like that, but I have decades of experience, and I can go out and find a few grams on average a day. But days come and go. I had a couple of days last summer where I found more than $1,000 in a single day. If I found that much in a day, that means I had some other days where I didn't find anything. And searching for patches and searching for places with good gold is like that. My advice is don't quit your day job just yet. Go out and learn the ropes. Learn how to find gold. Give it a try. Find out, see how much you're doing. The guys that are often the most enthusiastic about this that I've talked to are guys who've never found, or maybe they've only found a few flakes, but they think if they get out there and get into some backwoods area that not lots of people have been to, they're just going to start raking in the nuggets. And I got to tell you, even if you're 50 miles from nowhere in the middle of Alaska where there's just nothing, guys have been there. The value of gold has attracted prospectors for millennia, right? And people have been chasing gold for a long time. And so you need to learn the ropes and get the skill under your belt and learn how to find gold before you go out and quit your job. And like I say, have a big nest egg, have maybe a secondary so that you can do this for a few months and then go take a job to build back up your nest egg and that kind of thing. That can be a very positive way of learning and gaining the skills, and you can eventually get there. It takes time, but you can get there to where you're producing some decent gold and actually making some money from doing that. Now, the other thing that goes with the nest egg is the faster you have to sell your gold, the more dire straits you're in, the lower the price you're going to get. If you just happen to go down to some guy down at the corner and say, hey, I've got 2 ounces of gold here, what'll you give me for it? Well, the guy's going to give you less than what the full value of the gold is, because he's going to make a profit off of you. If you're in less of a hurry, you can do better. You can get a better price. And the amount of work that you put in, it's worth it to get the better price. And having a decent nest egg allows you to take the time to get the value for that gold, the most value that you can get, not just the, hey, I need it now price. So find out, test and see. Like I say, try to walk before you run. Remember that finding gold is a skill and stuff. I knew a guy, I'll tell you a story, that a guy who, he had a house that he owned in the San Francisco Bay Area, and he was so excited about finding gold and doing it on a larger scale. I mean, he had done some panning and sluicing a little bit, but he wanted to try stuff on a bigger scale. And so he sold his house, and he was going to live off the gold that he found. And he talked his 2 sons. He had a couple of older teenage sons that would come along with him. And he bought some claims and went out there, and he got a placer plant, a trommel type plant, and he had a front end loader to load it with, and he had a trailer to live out there in, and some other equipment that he bought, some heavy equipment. I think he had a bulldozer too, a small bulldozer. And he was going to go out there and push the gravel around on his claim and pick it up with a front end loader and load his placer plant with it and, make some good money. And anyway, he went out there, and he and his sons worked real hard for 3 months. And in 3 months' time, with all this money that he'd spent to buy heavy equipment, a placer plant, and everything else, when he was out there, I talked to him, and I said, have you sampled this? Have you taken samples to see how good the gravel is? And he says, no, we this is an area where the gold is coming down out of the hills. We know it's rich. We know it's good. We did a little bit of sampling, but not much. Well, when he really got down to it and spent 3 months of a summer digging for gold, the total take with his heavy equipment and everything was only 3 ounces. And like I say, gold was back maybe $600, $700, $800 an ounce. And it was barely enough to pay for his cost of buying food and the diesel that he ran, let alone to really live on it and make it worthwhile for him and his 2 sons. So sample and learn what you're going to do. Figure it out first. Finding gold is a skill, and knowing what you got is important. The big mining companies, they spend millions on sampling and assaying before they actually go out there and start making a mine. What do I recommend? If you really want to get into this, and you're new and you see the price of gold and you're excited and you want to spend time out in the woods and be your own boss and do your own prospecting for yourself and make money, make a living off of gold. Well, again, if you're new, if you haven't done this a lot, like I say, I'm going to tell you to walk before you run. So my first recommendation is that you join the GPAA or one of the other prospecting clubs in your area and get some area that you can go out and learn to find gold. Learn the ropes and become a better prospector. I also tell people, buy my book. I have 40 years of prospecting and I have a degree in mining engineering, and I boiled that stuff down and I put it in a book, and my book is going to be a great thing. So you buy the book, spend some time, read it, watch some of my videos. You'll learn a lot, and it doesn't take the place of actually getting out and getting your hands dirty and finding some gold, but it'll get you a long ways along the way. It'll save you a lot of time and effort in getting out in the field and learning that. You'll advance to the front of the class because you read my book, and then when you actually do it, you'll see for yourself. And a lot of times you'll read the book and then you'll get out there and do it, and you'll think, oh yeah, this is in line with what the book told me. A lot of guys have told me stuff like that. It's like, I read your book, and then when I got out there and did it, it's like, yeah, it all made sense to me. And so, then the final thing that I tell guys, prospecting is work. All right? I've had too many guys that think that going out and finding gold, it's just going to be easy. There'll be gold everywhere, and I'll go someplace where a lot of people haven't gone already. And I had a guy one time that he was all excited, and I actually was out camping in an area and I'd been prospecting, and the guy who owned the campground said to me, he said, hey, can you talk to this guy a little bit? He wants to find gold, and I know you know a lot about that, so why don't you give him a few hints? And so I told him, I said, hey, right down below this campground, there's some bedrock down there. I was just down there the other day, and I got me a nugget that, and at those times, that nugget would have been about $25-$30, which, hey, that ain't a bad nugget. But that was at a much cheaper price of gold. Currently, the value of that nugget would have been more like $75, something like that. And the guy looked at me like I was nuts. $25 nugget? Why would I go down there and find that? I'm looking for stuff that's $100 and $200 and $500. Where am I going to find nuggets like that? And I said, good luck, pal. Get out there, give it a try, give it a whirl. You'll see what reality is. And that's what I'm trying to, get to you guys in this video, is a little dose of reality. Prospecting is awesome. Prospecting is fun. There's a lot of great gold to be found. It's a challenge, and if you are willing to work for a challenge, to learn the skills and become better at it, you can find some decent gold for yourself. But you're not going to walk out there as a greenhorn and just strike it rich. You're not going to be able to toss aside the $75 nuggets because you want the $200 and $300 and $500 nuggets. It just don't work like that.
So my book, Fistful of Gold, it's an encyclopedia of gold prospecting. It has information on metal detecting, sluicing, panning, dry washing, the whole 9 yards. It's all covered in Fistful of Gold. And it's available on Amazon and also from High Plains Prospectors. I've kind of partnered with them. They're a full-line prospecting equipment dealer, and you can look up High Plains Prospectors on the internet, and you can get a discount in buying my book and other stuff by using the discount code Chris Ralph, all caps and no space in between Chris and Ralph. And the book will really help you be successful with your gold prospecting.